Okay, good morning everyone. Shalom Aleichem. We're continuing the series Pesacheinu Megadim, connecting the beginning and the end of the Parsha, but we want to apply it to Sefer Bereishis, not just to Parshas Vayechi, to Sefer Bereishis. By the way, if anybody wants to receive our weekly emails and our Mar Makimos, you could go to our site, rabbidg.com, and subscribe to our Mar Makimos. So just hit the subscribe button and they will be sent to you every Wednesday, every Friday, and you'll know the Shiurim schedule as well as you'll receive the Mar Makimos. Okay, so Sefer Bereishis, Pesacheinu Megadim. Sefer Bereishis begins with the words Bereishis bara. Both words begin with the letter Beis. How does Sefer Bereishis end? Vayisem ba'arayin b'mitzrayim. The last two words of Bereishis also begin with the letter Beis. In the Sefer Oitzer Plois HaTorah at the end of Vayechi, he says that this shows chasima me'ein psicha. As the Medrash in Bereishis says, that the Chumash Bereishis begins with the letter Beis, Bereishis bara, which is a lashon of bracha. Well, that's how it ends. Vayisem ba'arayin b'mitzrayim, a lashon of bracha. Now, you know, usually a book is supposed to end on a good note. You're supposed to end on a good note. How does Sefer Bereishis end? They put Yosef in a box. Is that a good end? I mean, if your name was Yosef, would you want to be put in a box? I don't think anybody would want to put in a box. That's the good ending of Bereishis. Why is it a good ending? Yeah? So, let's bring in what we just mentioned in the previous shir. There's a Sefer, Kivrei Tzadikim Ba'olam, Artsois Arav, regarding the Sadic Rabbi Rafal Badargo, that when it came time for him to pass away from the world, he commanded to be buried in an Arain, and he testified about himself that he is deserving to be buried in an Arain, Shaloi Ra Tipas Keri Biyamav Afilu Ba'oinas. And it's explained based on what Rabbi Avram Azulai writes, that someone who's not a complete Sadic cannot be buried in an Arain. Someone who's buried in an Arain, they're medakdek imay kechud hasara. And therefore, the only one buried in an Arain in the Torah is Yosef HaTzadik. So it comes out a real great treasure, a matana min hashamayim, that Sefer Bereishis ends with a wondrous report that even though Yosef was in Mitzrayim, Ervas Haaretz, he elevated himself to such a lofty level that he was zoicha to be a tzaddik yisoid olam, and he was able to be put in a box. And by the way, this also connects the beginning of the parsha, the beginning of the Sefer to the end of the Sefer, because the Sefer ends with a tikkun for what happened in the beginning. Adam Arishain. So the Gemara in Eruvin says, saw Keri la'oinsai for 130 years, and Yosef guarded himself, gadar atzmai, and he was zoichet to become a tzaddik yisoid olam and rectify the way Bereishis began. Now, on the same note, I saw this morning in the Agra Dekala, in the 194th permutation for the letters Bereishis, Tavra Shai, God created 310. That someone who guards his bris milah is called a tzaddik, and God created Shai Oilamos, 310 worlds, for this tzaddik to inherit an Olam Haba. This is what it means. Asid HaKadosh Baruch Hu lahanchil l'chol tzaddik v'tzaddik. God will give every tzaddik 610. Dafka a tzaddik is someone who's shomer bris, like Yosef. So says the Agra Dekala, Yosef, who was shomer his bris, was zoichet to Shai Oilamos, because he was not tamei bekeri. Keri's gematria 610. What keri is in Tuma, Yikar, honor is in Kedusha. So now, the end of Bereishis is really a perfect conclusion to how it began. Bereishis begins, Tavra Shai, God created 310 worlds. For who? For a tzaddik. For a tzaddik. Someone who guards himself from keri. That's the first word of Chumash Bereishis. Bereishis. Tavra Shai, God created 310 for someone like who? Like Yosef. That's why it ends. Yeah, like Yosef. You know what they did to him? They put him in an arayin. Only someone who is shomer bris could be put in an arayin. That's why it says Vayisem, 2 yuds. He guarded the bris. He was zoichet to be put in the arayin shalmata and the arayin habris shalmala. Okay. Here's another beautiful connection. My friend Reb Daniel Weinstein referred me to the comments of Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz that everything good in this world is preceded by darkness and devastation. For example, an egg, before the egg is fertilized, before the egg comes to fruition, it is so despicable and it's sullied and it looks like it will never be anything of significance. And this is what we find before God created the world. That Hashem was boine olam machrivan. God created and destroyed many worlds until this world came into being. That's what we find in the beginning of Bereishis. Bereishis bara Elokim, v'ha'aretz ha'yisasayu v'avayu. The world was empty, astonishingly, and only then vayarem Elokim yihiyar. And how does Bereishis end? You know, Yosef tells the brothers and Klal Yisrael the magic words, Pakoid Yifkoid. Pakoid Yifkoid. Moshe Rabbeinu says, in the name of God, Pakoid Pakadati. What is the magic of these words, Pakoid Yifkoid? Why didn't he give them a different answer? Like, the red bird flies over the red sky, or the red bird flies over the blue sky. Why Pakoid Yifkoid? So it's interesting, some quote this from the Panim Yafais. The Panim Yafais doesn't actually say this exactly. It comes from the Sefer Or Yitzchak of Radizil, that the secret of Pakoid Yifkoid is Pakoid Yifkoid are the letters that precede Tzara. Before a Tzadi is a Pei. Before a Reish is a Kuf. Before a Hey is a Daled. The letters Pakoid precede Tzara. There's an idea that which is good in this world is hidden in what is difficult. Shabbos is hidden in the weekday. From Tzara, it becomes Ritzei. The Geula is hidden in the Galus. Pakoid, the Geula is Nelam in the letter Tzara. After the letter Pei is a Tzadi, after the Kuf is a Reish, after the Daud is a Hey. This is the remez that Yosef said to Klal Yisrael. I know it looks bleak. I know it looks impossible. I know it looks dark. You don't see any way out. You don't see light at the end of the tunnel. But I want to tell you, in the Tzara of Mitzrayim is the Geula. That's why he used the word Pakoid. Pakoid symbolizes that from the Tzara will come the Galus, will come the redemption. The only reason there was a Galus was so that there should be a Geula. The Geula comes from the Galus, like from the Soyu Vavayu comes the Vayihi Ar. And before God even planned the Tzara, he planned the Geula. Pakoid are the letters before. But the Geula, the Tzara gives birth, so to speak, to the Geula. So just like the Sefer begins, from the Toyu Vavayu comes the Yihar, it ends. From the Tzara of Mitzrayim comes the Pakoid Yifkoid. Okay. There's another kesher between Bereishis bar Elokim and Vayisem ba'arayin b'Mitzrayim. Rashi says on Bereishis bar Elokim that God created the world because of the Torah that's called Bereishis, and because of Klal Yisrael that's called Bereishis. Question, what does it mean it's called Bereishis? What does it mean it's called Bereishis? The Torah, it says in it things that are supernatural. And God accords himself with Klal Yisrael in a supernatural way. That when we say that the Torah and Klal Yisrael preceded the world, what that means is that the world was created on condition that Hashem will override the system for the Torah and for Klal Yisrael. When we say the Torah and Klal Yisrael are Bereishis, that means for the sake of Klal Yisrael, for the sake of the Torah, God will bend nature, because nature was only created to do the will of Klal Yisrael and the Torah. Doesn't literally mean Hashem created Klal Yisrael before the world, but the world was created with the stipulation that it will bend for the sake of Klal Yisrael. There's a Tanai. The reason we're called Bereishis is God made a Tanai with the world that you need to bend for the needs of Klal Yisrael. Where do we find such a Tanai? Well, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu took the bones of Yosef with him when he left Mitzrayim. And Rashi says, why didn't Yosef make his children swear to bury him like when they buried Yaakov? And the Yismach Moshe says, Yosef knew that they needed him for Kriyas Yamsuf, that the Yam saw the bones of Yosef and split. Now, a miracle that happens to Klal Yisrael is how, through the stipulation that Hashem made with creation, that the world is created for Yisrael, that because Yisrael is called Bereishis, that's how Hashem makes miracles for Klal Yisrael. So we now see the connection between Bereishis, that because Klal Yisrael is considered the beginning, meaning the world was created for Yisrael, therefore, Vayisem ba'arayin b'Mitzrayim, the miracles that Hashem did with the Yam through the bones of Yosef was through this principle that Klal Yisrael was called Bereishis, namely that the world was created on condition that it does the will of Klal Yisrael. Now, there's an amazing Tzrar Hamar on Parshas Vayechi, which actually brings to our attention the connection between Bereishis and Vayechi, and it is a great testimonial to the entire premise of this Seder, of connecting the beginning and ends of Parshios and Svarim. The Tzrar Hamar, Rabbi Avram Saba, uses a beautiful lashon. He says there's a key and a lock to Sefer Bereishis. The fact that he even says there's an opening and a lock, a key and a lock, that's exactly what this Seder is. Pesacheinu Megadim, the treats at the door. He brings that Chazal already tell us why is this parsha Susuma. So he says it's sealed because this parsha is the key and the seal and the lock for the whole Sefer Bereishis and the entire Torah. It's an opening, it's a key and a lock for all the prophecies of the Nevi'im until the Yemais HaMashiach. And so in other words, the concept of the Geula is really the opening and the closing of the whole Torah, especially Bereishis. And then he says, this is alluded to in the 6 days of creation. The exiles, like the Medrash says, the 4 exiles are alluded to in Soihu, Vayu, Choshech, Al Pnei Sahaim, are alluded to in the 6 days of Bereishis. So the subject of the Geula is really the key and the lock and the opening and the closing of the entire Sefer Bereishis, also demonstrating that there's a connection between the beginning of the Sefer and the end of the Sefer. Finally, the Imre Yosef of Spinka, he says the beginning and end of this Sefer are connected in the following way. He says that it's clear in the writings of the Arizal that Parshas Bereishis is an allusion to a concept, a Cabalistic concept of Shviras HaKelim. There's such a concept, we're just going to say the words, of somehow various vessels were broken that gave fruition to creation as we have it, and the rectification of this process is alluded to in the 42-letter name of Hashem. Therefore, this Sefer begins with the letter Beis and ends with the letter Mem. it begins Bereishis and it ends B'Mitzrayim, the 42-letter name, which is the secret of Shviras HaKelim and Tikkun HaKelim. And likewise, the last word of Bereishis also ends in the same way. B'Mitzrayim begins with a Beis and ends with a Mem. And the word B'Mitzrayim itself is B'Mispar, the Shem Ben Mem Beis. Sefer Shemais begins with the word Ve'ela, which is also Gematria 42. So, Bereishis is really their two beginnings. In any event, this is also a mystical attempt of the Imre Yosef of Spinka to connect the beginning of Sefer Bereishis to the end of Sefer Bereishis. Wishing everyone bracha v'hatzlacha. Don't go anywhere. Here we go.
Recording stopped.